Hi, everybody. This is Tim Fullerton here. I am the fractional CMO of Jaxon AI and also run my own digital agency, marketing agency called Fullerton Strategies. I wanted to thank you all for joining us today. I'm sure we'll have some people trickling in as we go along, but I thought we would start off with some introductions from our esteemed panel of experts in all things AI. And I'm going to kick it to Scott first to introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. Founder CEO of Jaxon. 15 years of experience in the AI space, which makes me a dinosaur here. Worked with a lot of companies insofar as embracing AI. The ChatGPT wave, as we're all experienced right now, has opened up a lot of new interest. People trying to figure out how can we leverage it to the best of their ability, and that's where Jaxon shines, is helping companies embrace AI and doing it in a meaningful way where they can see the ROI.
Great. Rich, you're next.
All right. Rich Bibbens. I'm an advisor here at Jaxon. Scott and I have worked on and off together over the years of dinosaurhood for us both. And I'm currently sort of advising on largely the intersection between marketing and related CRM, intent classification, and so on with AI. So we have some engagements ongoing where we're helping CMOs try to understand where is this marketplace going and in what ways can they leverage AI and do it smartly and legally and so on. And I'm sure some of those topics will come up today.
Absolutely. And, when you guys say dinosaurs, I would actually say decades of experience, which actually, in this particular case, is important because a lot of folks in the space now don't have the years of experience of building these things years past when really people weren't paying attention to what was going on. And now that there's all the hype around ChatGPT, which we'll talk about in a second, and AI in general, I think that the folks listening will know they're getting a wealth of experience and knowledge from the panel today. So with that, I'd love to talk a little bit about ChatGPT. As a marketer myself, the first experience I had with AI really was ChatGPT when it launched earlier this year, and now I use it all the time. But obviously, in working with Jaxon, I've learned that there are some pitfalls to that too. So I'd love to just open up the discussion with the both of you and sort of talk about some of the things that marketers like myself might not know about ChatGPT and how to use it, and some potential better options than using that platform itself. So I don't know which one of you want to take it, but
I can start. So one thing I think is a little bit of a misnomer is that AI or ChatGPT is limited to question answering. Asking it or giving it a prompt and getting an answer back, which is awesome. I use it all the time also. But AI in general can be trained to do so many more tasks. In the marketing realm, it can be trained to do targeting. It can be trained to help create contact lists and determine the ideal customer profile and decide, what's the best use of advertising dollars, things like that. So it really has a wide range of use cases. You just need to train the models on how to do those use cases and use company-owned or use case specific data for those trainings.
Yeah,
so, sorry, just to
go ahead.
jump in for as the person with the 101 knowledge here. Now, Scott, when you say training the model for a marketer, like, what do you mean exactly by that?
Sure. So, you can liken it to a student that's learning as they go, and they have a foundation of basic understanding, like reading and math, but you're trying to make them a specialist in a specific area. I promise not to get too technical here, but I grabbed my kid's toy as a prop rather. So think of this as a neural network. This is what's under the hood of a chat GPT. And all of the machine learning models are somewhat structured this way. Deep learning, as people are really focused on these days, looks just like this, where there are multiple layers that are making decisions. They're processing data and making decisions. And when I say training, it really is adjusting the weights and biases between each one of these connection points And each connection point is essentially a slice of data.
Great. All right. Rich, sorry, I interrupted you. You go ahead.
No, not at all. Yeah, no, I thought I would maybe just give an example if it's helpful for folks that in my past life as the CTO at Demand Science, we had a similar kind of deep learning challenge, which is we had lots of data that told us where our contacts in the a very large contact database worked, what those companies might be interested in purchasing, how we might want to target certain folks. Scott mentioned the ideal customer profile. Who are the first folks you'd want to talk to? You probably don't want to talk to the purchasing manager if you're starting to sell an HR product. You probably want to talk to the HR decision maker. And the next thing you want to do is to find out, do they have any interest, or did they just buy an HRIS so they have no interest in talking to you? So we developed a machine learning solution that basically scanned all the information we could get our hands on. Some of it is coming from social media sources, LinkedIn, coming from our own sales group, or the some of the data sources we could procure and experience through online negotiations with companies. And the combination of that, back to Scott's toy there, is we had lots of different layers that told us who's the right person to talk to in what order, and are they most reachable in this way or another, or do they hang up on the phone but they will accept an email and maybe even open up a piece of content. So we had a few versions of that, but basically the idea was let's figure out how much we can glean about an account or a customer, and then you target your campaigning accordingly.
Right. And I think that next question for the as the people who are listening, thinking like, oh, so I can just plug this all into ChatGPT and do it, which I think is what many people actually think. But there are some real drawbacks to doing that, and I know Scott, you and I have talked a lot about it. And could you just give sort of a quick overview of why you may not want to put company data into ChatGPT?
Yeah, just through experience, it's never one model that solves a problem. It's almost always a combination of models that will solve problems, combination of models and techniques. And with large language models like ChatGPT and others, all of them, they have this issue that people are referring to as the hallucination problem, where they can just make things up. To the point where I was at my kid's birthday party the other day, and I told him I'm working in AI, and he made a joke, well, they all just lie. And that's kind of a misnomer. They're still awesome. They still are better than the status quo, the current approaches. And you can ground them and give them ways, and this is part of the secret sauce of Jaxon, is how can you keep them on the rails, put up guardrails, as I like to call it, where they have reference knowledge bases that is your own data, like the list of data that Rich was just rattling off there. That becomes the grounding of it all, so that it has a reference and it doesn't hallucinate.
Right. And I think the other thing is do you want to explain a little bit about there was a very high profile story of a couple of months ago about Samsung, also not just the hallucinations, but maybe Scott or Rich, either one of you want to explain what happened with them when they used it internally.
Yeah. Well, I think we both should take about. I want to play off that one. When it comes to security, and you have your own data that you don't want to leak, you don't want to bring it to the clouds, you don't want to bring it to the open AIs of the world, and you shouldn't. You can create private instances of these large language models, the open source varieties, which Facebook and Google and others are bringing in and making available to everyone to use. You don't have to have hundreds of millions to train your own ChatGPT. You can leverage these open source models and have them use your own data, and you're never leaking anything.
Yeah, and I think that's such a key thing for everyone in the marketing, sales related functions that the minute you're using a chat GPT, and I'll use one use case that I'm involved with now, where if you have a plugin to be able to suck some contact data or intent data out of a spreadsheet and into ChatGPT, which is, it's a wonderful use case. I mean, it's very useful to be able to say, I want to do a normalized SQL query against contact data, and then I want to bring it in for the language processing that the LLM can do. You can assume that you've just given away some valuable contact data. And if uniquely because you spoke to a customer last week that they're interested in this product category and they're interested in taking a phone call and so on, you probably just multiply the number of phone calls they're going to be getting. And so, to Scott's point, the importance of privacy and security is something that almost has to come ahead of the experimenting, which is very unusual for tech projects. In my experience, you'd always try it. You'd blow a hand off. You'd try something again. You'd eventually launch a pilot. Now it could be pretty quick to launch and pretty quick to create some trouble for yourself.
So I think we've, to recap, we've learned that ChatGPT and other large language models that are public have this hallucination problem where when it doesn't know the answer, frankly it makes them up, and then also the issue of if companies upload proprietary information into ChatGPT, it just becomes part of the ChatGPT LLM, and anybody can access it. So then I think for a marketer's perspective, they're thinking, oh my God, I can't use this thing anymore that I've started because I don't want to do any of that. So what is the viable option to marketers, and what can they actually, if they're going to invest their time and their resources in this, what will they actually get out of this alternative path?
Sure. Well, I personally believe that private clouds are safe. You're not going to leak information to wherever you're hosting your data already. And so do all of the work there. So bring tooling in like Jaxon, and we'd love to work with y'all to make this all happen. And open source tools and open source models to basically recreate your own ChatGPT. And then you can do, like I was talking about earlier, train it on a variety of tasks. We haven't got into some of the details of it yet, but to actually effectuate return on ad spend, you have to train it to be good at, like what Rich was alluding to, intent classification. Is this contact actually a good potential buyer? Do they have the intent to buy something? And then, like I was saying before, it's not usually one model that solves it. It's a combination of models. And so what we typically recommend for this type of use case is then you marry in a propensity model. Do they have the intent and the propensity to buy something? Are they in the right geography? And then you fine tune that ICP and your target lists accordingly. Rich?
Yeah, Rich, I'd like to hear a little bit more. And so just for folks who are, if this is their first session listening on how AI can benefit marketing teams, as Scott's really starting to dig into, and Rich will elaborate in a second, the fact that you're able, with the existing data that you've got within your teams, you'll be able to do much more analysis on what's actually happening with those people and what types of ads they're getting. So actually increasing the return on investment on the spend and we're in a world where we all know that performance media spend or effectiveness is dropping, and we need to find some ways to make it more effective. So with that, I'll kick it over to Rich, who's more the expert in this area than I am.
Yeah, so I think this is sort of an area of personal interest and excitement. So you may have to give me the hook after I get a little ways down, Tim. But to me, the science behind getting the intent or the propensity to buy has increased in the last year and a half significantly. Even before ChatGPT, the idea that the social media sources were now offering capturable data that could be factored into some of those models. The ability to get your own information out of a campaign that launched 3 months ago might have had half the audience was not ready to consider that product category, but in another quarter, they might be all about saying, geez, we've got to get a new marketing database repository online because I'm getting asked a lot of questions and I have no analyst capability to answer them. So, a lot of the process of putting together an ICP program or an intent program comes down to saying, what are the data sources that you have available? And then which are the ones that make the most sense? This is going to be an iterative process, almost certainly. So if there's 4, 5, 6 sources out there, and some you own and some you're going to lease, and some maybe you can scrape or we can make available because we've done past engagements. A lot of those now are opportunities to learn more about the company if it's an ABM campaign, more about the prospect, more about their role in the organization. Are they a decision maker? Are they a late stage decision maker? So, you want to hold your powder before you go directly to saying, let's get the CMO on board. But at the end of the day, a lot of what we're bringing to the table is we have now the list of here's the data sources that either we have or we know how to work with, or, oh, you've got a Salesforce.com or you've got a HubSpot instance, we know how to work with that data. And then, as Scott was saying, combining 4, 5, 6 data sources into something which you can now make decisions around. You can rank readiness to buy. Who is the first person you want to send the email or build some brand awareness? Those are things that we're now familiar with, working with those data sources, and can help advise, guide that process. Get the data deals in place, and so on. So probably enough for the first dive, unless any questions out of that.
Yeah, I have a follow-up, but I'm gonna pause for a second because I haven't done this yet. But I just wanted to let folks who are listening know, if you have any questions for the group here, to just drop them in the comments, and I will find a space to ask them. The other thing I wanted to just also mention is, if you are interested in learning more about this after the session, or if you are interested in actually doing the things that we are talking about here, I just recommend you go to our website, which is Jaxon, JAXON.ai, and go to the Contact Us page, and let us know you're interested, and we'll get back to you immediately, because this is the stuff we do, and I think we're seeing more and more interest in it all the time. And with that said, I want to go back both to Rich and Scott. So, we're talking about all these multiple data sets that could be potentially used in a trained LLM. What do you say to the groups that don't have data science teams, or don't really have the technical know-how? They have the data, right? It's either sitting in Salesforce or HubSpot or something like that. What is someone to do if they're like, it's just me and a few people? Like, what how can you help them succeed with this?
Yeah, sure. We're seeing this a lot, where companies are realizing, I mean, this is kind of somewhat of influencers pushing this on folks and whatnot. But people are starting to think, and I think it's rightfully so, that if they don't start to embrace AI, they're going to get washed away. And we were talking to a data company that they realized that, hey, our data is pretty valuable. We can monetize it through AI. And if we don't monetize it through AI, we might not be here in a few years. And so how can we talk to our data is becoming a popular use case. But that company and many companies that we work with don't have data science teams. They don't have whiz-bang PhDs at the ready, and they need guidance through the process. And that's what we've built into Jaxon. Prior to Jaxon, we ran a machine learning consulting firm, and we would do this completely, from scratch by the hour. But we kept learning what were the pitfalls, where can we create, and this is essentially what we created with Jaxon, an opinionated framework where you don't have to make a lot of the data science decisions. You just need to know what the model is that you want to get out on the other side. What is the ROI that will be most impactful here?
So it really could be, and Rich, I'd love to hear your thoughts after this. So it really could be a relatively low lift for a team to actually stand something up. Like, let's say if we're working with Jaxon, for example, could build the LLM, train the model and doing all of that, and really, really just reap the rewards at the end of the project, right?
Well, one of the best things that ChatGPT has done for the world is give it a UI, give AI a UI. So the chat interface where people can just use natural language to test the models, to create the models, and this is a lot of what Jaxon helps people do. You don't have to understand the fundamentals. You don't have to understand what's happening under the hood, as long as the verification and validation testing that you do on the other side is sound, and that's the human in the loop that you keep there. And certainly Jaxon's engineering team and delivery teams can help get things set up, but it's very much a collaborative effort where you're the experts, you know your data the best, you know your target use cases the best, and we work with you to codify those and bring them into the ML realm.
That's great. Rich, anything to add on to that?
I guess the one thing I would say is that I think we're at sort of the beginning stages of real applied AI and sophisticated BI. I mean, it's been around for the PhDs that Scott has on his team. I mean, those folks have been doing it for a while. The thing I think for much of corporate America, the tools and the people are often not available inside the four walls to be able to say, what do I need to know to improve my marketing yield rate, or what is the data telling me about my new product launch, and so on. And often, there's folks who are spreadsheet jocks asking each other, well, what do you think, and what are you seeing, or what are you hearing? We have the people who can kind of do that soup to nuts. So if it's the consultative part to say what are the right questions or what are the right data sources, or it's the analyst experts to say, well, we'll tell you what the data is telling us without building out an AI anything. We can start giving you some sense for what are the right questions, all the way up to building out the machine learning model. So it's I think the right way to sort of look at a Jaxon is there's probably gaps in your organization if you're like most of us, and you don't have all the right data science folks or all the right model builders or whatnot, being able to come to somebody and say, I just need to ask you a couple of consultative questions and let's see where it goes. Does it go to a near-term solution, or does it, turn into building a private LLM?
Yeah. Well, one question I think of for a lot of marketers is that, especially in large companies, right? Like the teams like where I was at, we worked previously in a few other places, but so we had a marketing team of over 100 people, and we also relied on agencies. And I know that a lot of teams rely on agencies in particular for the performance media or paid media, both actually just doing the work, but also giving folks the data and the return. Do you think it's safe to say that setting something up like this could actually reduce your reliance on some outside help and potentially even reduce costs?
I am not too familiar with how advertising spend works when you actually have to place the ads. I don't think it can replace the agencies from that perspective, but helping the agencies are offloading some of the analytics work that the agencies can effectuate, I think is where it will fall.
That was sort of more where I think it's more about the effectiveness of the ad. The ad placement stuff is a completely different beast.
Right.
And no internal organization wants to deal with that. And
No.
I can speak to experience, but I think figuring out ways to work with the agencies, or frankly, even agencies using tools like this, is actually a really interesting place too, because this would actually give them a monster competitive advantage over other agencies, because they are able to look at their data in a way that others aren't able to, because they don't have an internal, we'll call it ChatGPT for lack of a better word. But yeah, I think that both the effectiveness of the advertising and then frankly, like potentially reducing the amount you're having to spend to blast out, with a model, I'll call a model, or basically a framework for just trying to find the right people, where you could be much more strategic in using tools like Jaxon builds.
Yeah, I have a hypothesis I don't think I've even shared with you, Rich, that you really want to have a collaborative approach here, working with the agencies, because you as the company know your ROI the best. It's not just about knowing your data and your company the best. You know what the actual impact is, and the agency just wants to drive traffic to you. And traffic is great, but traffic that doesn't convert is not so great. So back to what I was alluding to, or not alluding to, getting into the details of, with intent classification and propensity modeling and really targeting the right ICP, or defining the right ICP and then targeting the right people, rather. That's, I think, where the companies can shine.
Yeah, no question. I also think in that agency world, there's a lot of change that is either going on or going to be going on, that the tools that are available to them are mind-boggling, and that we're still early on, but whether it's plugging Einstein into your Salesforce data, your CRM data, those agencies supporters like Salesify, who are now deploying their AI modules, which help with that ICP and refinement. So there's going to be a lot of options out there. I think it's really a question of both the agency and the marketing side make the investments to say, here's the one we think will help differentiate us and sort of complement our strengths the best. You can't get them all. I mean, we probably had 25 different tools in our marketing organization where I used to work, and you'd say, geez, how do you even keep track of which ones are out there? And that's probably doubled in terms of the number of options. So you got to be smart about it. You have to have it tied back to a go-to-market strategy and where you see the needs there, and then ultimately it's picking and going with it.
Yeah, so that's super helpful, and now cognizant of time, we've only got a couple minutes left, and I think probably the big question on a lot of marketers' minds is, where do I start? Like, how do I even begin to dip my toe in? Like, all of what you guys are saying sounds great, but like, what is step one? And I'm going to turn to Scott first for that.
Sure. So there are a lot of consulting firms that are, coming to companies and saying, we'll help you build your own LLM, and the price tags can be pretty hefty. And it's not a great way of testing it out to see if it's going to work for you. So I'm a big fan of bringing it down to what I call a phase 1A and B, where the phase 1A is very collaborative, working on what's the lowest hanging fruit that will have the highest ROI, tackling that one and tying it to a campaign. And so you're not making a big, lifelong decision here. You're just trying it out for one campaign and seeing how it impacts that campaign. Is the employment of AI effective for what it is that you want to do?
Great.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think the low hanging fruit, just to put a point on it. We worked with one group just to say, you do a dozen manual steps in your processing of a campaign. Getting the lead, getting the targets, figuring out what media to reach out. Actually collecting the data, the success data from it. And we just said, let's just put ChatGPT in front of it. Just see what that looks like. And the answer was, it was largely automated after a few weeks work. So at least proof of concept is done. You can decide how much you want to invest to make it private or do other things to it.
That's great. And I think, in closing, that if you do need help with doing that, or you have any questions at all, that's what Jaxon is here for. So if you want to drop a comment in here and we can look at it later, if you go to jaxon.ai and fill out the contact us form, we'll be in touch. But with that, I think we are right at time. So I want to thank our experts here, AI experts here today, Rich Bibbens and Scott Cohen. And like I said, if you have further questions afterwards, please feel free to reach out to us. But otherwise, hope you all have a wonderful day, and we'll be back on here again soon. So thank you very much, everybody.
Great. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Take care, Tim.